What is up, guys? Welcome back. Good evening. It's been a while. I am so glad to be back and doing this live for you guys. I don't really know where we're going tonight. This is another impromptu evening. So, with no further ado, I want to bring in my good friend Evan, as usual.
Yoink. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going extremely well because I
Excellent.
finally.
Yes, that is what I'm talking about. One of the things we will definitely be discussing tonight.
Oh man, I was so excited. So
Very
excited.
cool. Well, quick introduction. It's been a minute, so I think when we had the last Chinese Universe, we were like, we'll probably back in a couple weeks. It's been like a month. There's been a ton going on my end. I'm sure there has been for you as well. We're in summer. There are kids running around. All kinds of interesting stuff, and definitely a lot going on within the infinite confines. Is that even a thing of the Macroverse? but I am Evan Matthews, co-founder, CEO at Macroverse, and you are.
I am Tiny Universe, aka Scott Pierpont. I use my real name now, so
Crazy.
I don't know. I don't know which one to go by, actually.
It's hard not to call you Tiny because that's how I know you. But then we're IRL now, so it's all good. So yeah, I mean, I guess quick segue. So as that just came up, like, we know each other for now the past, wow, is it like 2020, 2021?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. So it's been 4 years plus. That's actually insane to actually think about. We met in some of our explorations of kind of digital collectibles and the whole wide world of insanity going on in the I don't know. There's really no other world to say other way to say it than just the wild, insane world of Web3 that was blowing up in 2020. And then found, I think, our mutual love of comics and storytelling and all of that. And so Tiny's been a member of the team as someone in the community and helping to run the community and manage the community. Really very close to the beginning of all of that, and has had the great pleasure of working with you on some stories and writing some stuff and making some short comics that will actually find yet another opportunity to get in front of people here over the next little bit, which something else we can talk a little bit about tonight. So yeah, man, it's great. We started doing these live streams probably about a year ago. Initially we were very good at doing them weekly. And then they've had to be a little more flexible over the past few months as things have just gotten very, very crazy busy on my end and on the Macroverse side, and then I know for you as well. So now you kind of get Tiny's Universe when you're lucky enough to get Tiny's Universe, and and I think I feel pretty confident we can still commit to having at least one show a month, and as new stuff comes in and out, we'll have reasons to ramp it up or ramp it down. But this is always really a kind of an informal conversation, a chance to ask questions. I'm actually going to put out right now, if you are watching the show and want to be a guest on the show or ask questions, I'm just putting a link out if you're watching on. Oh, wait a second. What do I have to do? Something is keeping me from posting this. Hold on a second.
It's always when it's live. It's never.
Of course, it's when it's live. Absolutely. So what's going on here? We're streaming right now on YouTube. We're on X. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. So we're on a bunch of different channels right now. I'm not sure why it is not letting me post this link. So Instead, if you're watching this, sorry about that. If you're watching this,
Post in the comments.
yeah, what you'll need to do is post in the comments, and if you're on one of the platforms that supports comments coming into this kind of hub that we're streaming from, be happy to answer live questions and have this be a chat, not just between us, but from anyone that's watching as well. As we've been doing for the past couple months, we do also have a limited edition collectible badge for anyone that watches Tiny's Universe in June of 2025. So I'll post the link to claim that on the Macroverse platform here as well. It probably won't let me also post that in the direct message here, so I will go around and actually post it in the comments after we finish streaming. So if you're watching and you want to get that limited edition badge, then the way to do that would be to just keep an eye on the comments on the different platforms that we're currently streaming on. So that's some housekeeping. Tiny, you held it up. Let's jump right to Chamber of Chill's annual #1. So yours got there a little later than I expected, but give me your unvarnished, like, real feeling and opinion of getting that in the mail.
I mean, I was worried. I might be one of the last people to have received it, other than
weird
international. But no, I mean, it was packaged well. I saw some people that maybe weren't super happy with the envelopes and stuff, but I didn't have any issues. Came perfect, flawless. Sweet packing, no, man, I from packaging to inside, I mean, I couldn't be happier. I love it. And then, again, just seeing stuff like that front cover with the introduction to the first annual and seeing what you guys have kind of done with it, I mean, I don't see how anyone couldn't be happy with it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you liked it. I mean, it's for anyone that doesn't know the context, we have a line called Authentic Editions, which is one of the kind of core divisions at Macroverse. And so what we're doing is we're recreating is the wrong way of saying it. We're restoring classic, mostly Golden Age and Silver Age comics. And so this is the pre-code horror collections. These are all comics. There you go. These are all comics. It's a ghost, it seems, but these are 70 classic comics from the Golden and Silver Age, so from the 40s and 50s. We've had some challenges, which at a certain point we'll be able to kind of really dive into, because at some point I think it'd be interesting for people to share like the full post-mortem on what we've had to do to get this across the finish line, because it was not what we expected we were going to have to do, and that's kind of all I can say about it at the moment. But we've had to pivot a bunch of times. We've had to solve problems that we thought were solved in one way and, do it in a different way. And at the same time, there are two things I can promise to anyone that supported the campaign, which is a Kickstarter campaign where we launched this collection. The books are only better due to the delay. We actually never stopped working on them. So even though we're literally 6 months late delivering them, which is, as the CEO of the company, all of that blame does squarely rest with me. But I will say we've taken the time to just make them better and better and better. So what you're getting 6 months late is actually a better product than you would have gotten 6 months ago had we been able to, do what we thought we would as quickly as we thought we would. The other thing, which I have to say, is we launched the campaign in October. We did a bunch of work prior to launching the campaign to think that we had printing and fulfillment and paper and everything lined up to deliver this, on time. So we did not go into it going like, oh, we'll say December and then we'll deliver it in June. That was not the plan. But some things kind of blew up along the way, and we literally had to move again, I'm not ready to kind of go into all the details, but we had to move some things around. We had to replace some elements that, you know, we thought were in place that ended up falling through for whatever reason. There were you know, the tariff issues and supply chain issues and all that stuff. So there's been just, you know, a series of things that we've had to work our way around. And fortunately, we've got a great team of people working with us on this who are, you know, specialists and veterans of comics and publishing and all that stuff. So we've been able to do that. And now I can happily say, literally as of yesterday, the paper, which has been the big holdup, has arrived at the printer. We've got a special collectible badge to celebrate that as well. If you're with us in our Facebook group or getting Kickstarter backer updates. And that means the last real, like, when can we actually print these things question has been answered. So the paper is there. I went through and, you know, did final approvals on all of the print files today with the printer. We had in this long list of things where we're like, oh, we had this and now we pivoted to this. You know, I picked a final red foil color yesterday. So, you know, we just, yeah, it's been a number of things where it's like, oh, it's this. Well, actually, it's got to be this. So, you know, red foil is locked down, silver foil is locked down. We ended up also, because of this extra time, being able to really fine tune the fluorescent, you know, ink printing process. And, you know, we're doing something that, you know, as Tiny will tell you, is something we try to sometimes do something that no one has ever done before. So we're printing these in a way that, you know, no one's ever done with fluorescence before, which I think is going to be pretty spectacular. And so all this is now, you know, the final materials are there. We don't know quite yet what our press date is going to be, but now that the paper has arrived, all the files are approved, everything's kind of with the printer. Now we should know over the next, you know, I would say 2 to 3 days. So either end of this week, beginning of next week, we'll know, okay, this is the day we're going on press. This is when all the books will be printed, and then they have to be assembled and stapled. And, you know, with fluorescence and foils, there's a little bit of time required for the covers to, you know, cure properly or to dry so that they don't get, you know, damaged or, you know, get messed up in shipping. So we'll have a full timeline of like printing to sending to our fulfillment partner, and then they'll need some time to literally take all the different pieces and put them together into the boxes with the posters and trading cards and the things that, you know, backers got as part of the rewards in the campaign. So there'll be still a little bit of time, but now the wheels are like really in motion. And so we think our estimate of shipping, you know, mid to late July is still very much on track. And so hopefully by the end of July, people will have the Frightening 15 in their hands. And so and then shortly thereafter, the rest of the collection. So we're doing this in 2 batches. We're doing all the Frightening 15, getting that out the door. That covers over half of the backers. And if you're listening and you're one of them, thank you. But that'll be, you know, over half of the people that back the campaign will then be completely taken care of, and everyone else will get their Frightening 15 packages. And then we will not charge you additional shipping, but we will send a second delivery with the rest of the collection as we kind of get those things moved through. And then if you're an Archie backer, which is the other category for authentic editions right now, so we have Pre-Code Horror and then Silver and Golden Age, I think actually all Golden Age Archie books. So Archie Comics, of course, being the Riverdale gang. So if you're an Archie backer as well, you know, we're not as delayed with Archie. We're a little bit delayed with Archie only because this has to kind of go first. So essentially, as soon as Pre-Code Horror makes its way through this cycle, then Archie will be ready to follow right behind it. And so we're working out that schedule as well right now. And, you know, I will admit we're a little overdue for a bigger update for Archie backers, but that will come within the next week as we can give you some more concrete information about schedule and timeline. Archie is also the benefactor of this delay in that we've learned a ton about, you know, how to make this product by making this product. So, you know, I think everything is only, you know, it's sucks, honestly, that it's late, but it's absolutely a better result because of it. And it also sets us up very well for the next things that we have planned. The sad part to me is we had planned an additional 4 collections this year, and we'll probably end up doing 2 more instead of 4 more just because of the timeline. That said, we've got a bunch of other really cool and exciting things happening across the company, from other, collectible categories like vinyl music. We talked in a previous episode about the Wu-Tang Clan album release that we did in February for Record Store Day. So if you're interested in that, go check out the previous episode around that. Super cool. And then we've got some other stuff coming out in comic stores with Titan Comics in that mixed print category as well. Some fun stuff planned for Comic-Con this year at the end of July. So actually planning a bunch of activations with different partners at Comic-Con, which will all feed back into the Macroverse platform. And then, that's really kind of the context or the umbrella for all of this, is we're building what I think of as kind of the hub for fandom, collectibles, and initially comics, and ultimately all kinds of storytelling content that will live within this Macroverse platform that we're building. And so you're seeing, we've got an amazing little group of early alpha users and testers, and for all of you that are using the platform right now, I also have to say, like, your feedback and the kind of willingness to deal with the bugs and things that aren't working just yet, and giving that feedback to us. A number of people have emailed us with like your screenshots or videos of challenges or problems they've run into. That stuff is invaluable at this phase. Like, you are seeing this at the rawest version that we could possibly make available for people to use. And when you run into those things, it's incredibly useful for us to know, what are called edge cases a lot of the time in software development, where, if you follow the path that it's supposed to follow, it all works the way it's expected to. But if you happen to do something slightly differently, or maybe it's just your account for some reason, or, whatever, something that we don't expect happens, or something fails, and those reports, that feedback helps us track down those things, which just makes it better for everybody. So basically the theme of this, and then I'll shut up, is my undying gratitude for letting us make all this stuff that we love making. Now, sorry, I'll shut up.
While you're talking about the website, because there's so many things that you just touched on that it's so hard for me not to interrupt, but I've learned how.
Well, it's so hard for me to shut up. So there you
go. No, because it's all good information. The website. So since we've been playing on there and doing stuff and collecting XP, all that good stuff, you have rolled out the secure token, and obviously that will lead into other collectibles and such. But I see a lot of people asking, and I was wondering as well.
Yeah.
All that stuff that we've collected, does all that stuff need to be secured? Is it?
Yeah. It's a great question. So there are a couple of questions that have been recurring, and I've been jumping in either on Facebook or on Kickstarter as people have asked questions. And myself, a couple of people on the team, we try to get back really quickly with those answers. So the short version is, right now, because we are in this very early alpha building testing phase, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. You're not going to lose anything if you don't secure something. It's not like, at least at the moment, there's no deadline of like, oh, you didn't secure that, so now it's going to fall out of your collection. We're not going to take stuff away from the people that have been so, useful and good to us, up to this point. So what we're doing is we're building a series of different connected systems in the background in the app and in the platform. And so there's XP, which is sort of an in-app currency. You can earn XP by coming back to the platform every 6 hours and claiming it. So you essentially get 100 XP every 6 hours. So 600 or 6 hours. How many times is that? 4 times a day. 4 times a day. 6 times 4. Yes, 4 times a day. Wow. I am actually generally pretty good at math, but real brain problem there. So you can claim 400 XP a day. Am I right? Is it 4 or is it 6? 6, 12. Okay, 4 times a day. Yes. Let's settle that. 400 XP a day by coming back to the platform every 6 hours. Badges that we roll out every day as collectible badges, those are 100 XP to claim, for example. So, you kind of in a system right now where as long as you keep coming back to the site and claiming XP, you're kind of got what you need to collect the things that are coming out on the platform. And so those are the, when you're spending XP to secure items, it is creating a subcategory on the back end. So essentially you're, invisibly right now kind of ending up with two collections. There's kind of the broad general collection, and then there's what we call putting things in your permanent collection. And then there are some things that securing is required for additional functionality. So for example, when you have the comics, there's an XP cost to secure those. We want those in your permanent collection. So that's why that is there, is to kind of, force that function so that when you secure it, that's what unlocks the reader. So you can have the comic in your collection, but in order to unlock the reader and get kind of full access to it, then it does require securing it. And then, the other experiment, and, this is a experiment with a purpose. We invited people on Facebook to start adding, kind of story concepts, and anyone that's been around long enough will see some echoes of things we've done in the past year. But, one person in particular took us up on that and started writing this very fun kind of narrative around some of the badges. And so then an artist from a series that we love called Digital Pools, he decided to do an illustration, which was from those stories. And so I love this kind of stuff where it's kind of creating connective tissue between storytelling and the community and the fandom that we're trying to build here. And so, here's a badge that is only exists because, people came in from Pre-Code Horror at this point. Everyone basically right now is in the Pre-Code Horror, backer community. We haven't even opened this up to the RC backers and beyond yet. So we're in a very small, group right now as we're in this alpha phase. But here's someone that wrote some stories. Matt Stevens came in, created this awesome illustration based on one of those stories. Then that became something that people could collect. And so that one too, you could spend XP to secure. And with something like that, I'll share a little bit about where this is going. So, basically they'll be claiming XP or ultimately being able to purchase XP as a sort of an in-app currency like Robux or V-Bucks or anything that people are kind of familiar with as in-app currencies. There will still be ways to earn it as well. So this is, it's not going to turn into a, only pay to play, but we want to be able to unlock bigger things, other experiences, and frankly, be able to start generating some revenue, not just for the company, but for other creators, for publishers, for partners, as we make more and more things available. So you can start to see how this could play out, where if you have, badges, which you can redeem for free, and then you choose to put them in your permanent collection or not. And then there can be storytelling and narrative that happens around that. And then we can reward people for doing that. Behind the scenes, the person that wrote those stories, I sent him 1,200 XP as a nice little, thank you for that. Just happened to be the same amount required to secure the illustration that Matt did for that story. So there's been, a number of people that have chosen to do that. And so we're just building this kind of system of connectivity and collectability that is just going to lead to more and more and more kinds of things. And so, this might be, as you collect things, there will be certain things where we'll be able to say, oh, you got, 10 badges, therefore we can now give you something special for that. Or, over time, the things that you secured will have a greater impact. So all the way back around to the beginning question, right now, there's not a lot of visible difference between securing and not securing. But down the road, there will be things that, because they've been secured, because there is some, essentially microtransaction happening in that, we'll then be able to put more things back into the system, both as rewards for that activity or for access to certain things because of that activity. And so, we're building this, much bigger infrastructure around all of that can play out in a bunch of different ways. And actually one example that'd be relevant to this audience is, as you get the Frightening 15, it probably won't be a big surprise at this point that each of the books will be able to be claimed as a digital twin, secured into your collection. And then you've got this digital reader copy on Macroverse. And when it's secured, one of the functions there is it does become something that's permanent in your collection. One of the things that I hate as a fan is, you hear about Comixology or Dark Horse or other digital platforms that have shut down, and you got you got 5 days to download all of your stuff or it's gone forever, no matter how much money you spent, no matter what you did to get those things, to download all your PDFs. So we can do a deeper dive into the technology of this at a different kind of later time. But when you move things into your permanent collection, we can't take them away. They're going to be accessible forever. And so even if, purely hypothetically, even if, you had the opportunity to, get a different book from a different publisher, through Macroverse, once that's secured and you've, said, now this is in my collection, it's permanently in my collection, even if that hypothetical other publisher ended up no longer publishing anything through Macroverse, you're going to have that thing forever. And so that's a big part of it, that mechanism. And then the kind of gamification of what we can do with all that stuff over time is, I think, going to get really interesting and really fun. So that's part of the master plan. And then just to, again, I go into these long, all this in my head for so long, it's hard for me to really get to the condensed version sometime. So do you need to secure everything right now? No. Should you secure everything right now? Yes, in my opinion. And that's the short answer.
Very nice. While you brought it up to the Facebook group and that there is a Facebook group and a little bit of alpha in there occasionally, there's definitely daily drops for badges and stuff like that. But I want to encourage anybody that's on there to go to the website if you haven't, register, and come back to the group and drop us your name and your page or whatever, so we can follow you. And I'd like to see more people interacting.
That's one of the things we're heading towards as well. I mean, we're, right now we're in bug fixing mode. We're in infrastructure kind of building mode. We're kind of slowly rolling out features. And I hope people are starting to see some of these bugs getting squashed, slowly but surely. If you're paying attention to the reader, I don't know how often people are checking their copy of the annual, because right now that's really the only book available on the reader. But, we've been making a lot of progress there. One thing about software development is we try to get a first version of it out, especially in this kind of alpha testing phase. It's we're trying to get kind of an ugly, workable first version of it out in front of people as quickly as possible, so we can start to get some feedback and start to find these places where it's falling down or isn't working. And so, it is kind of the double-edged sword of being an early adopter or an alpha, tester. I am a chronic early adopter. I'm running, all the beta software on my phone and, all that stuff all the time. And so, you got to be willing to put up with the rough edges, when you're doing that. And so, again, I really appreciate, everyone that is. But, one thing we this is just a good example of the kind of thing that we're working our way through on the tech side is, we launched the first version of Reader. We started to get a lot of feedback, started to use it a bunch more. It's not just, the small team that's building it, but now there's, real people using it. We can see what kind of load that is, what kind of effect that's having on the servers. And one of the things that we found is we weren't getting the pages served fast enough from the servers, because we're trying to use very high quality images for the pages. If you visit the reader now, you can actually pinch and zoom or, zoom in on pages to see details. And so something like, these classic books where so much of it is about the actual dots and the printing and stuff like that. It's very cool to be able to kind of zoom in and see that texture and how those pages are actually built and made. So, we've been adding new features and then just fine tuning, not just the interface, which, to me is the part that I really care a ton about, but then our engineers and developers are also figuring out how do we essentially stream comics the way that, you stream, Netflix or YouTube, in a way where we can get things to you quickly, where you're not having to wait very long. If you look at some other platforms, it's like they're literally, you got to load the whole thing and then you start reading. We're trying to balance that with, performance and making sure that this is the best experience that we can provide. And then something that, Tiny, you'll know from a long time ago is we are also building the different formats that we have, into one kind of Swiss Army knife player, so that you'll be able to jump back and forth between the kind of traditional comics experience, which we call our swipe story, because you're swiping through pages. We've got an early build of the scroll reader, so that you're scrolling like webtoons or that kind of thing. And then we've got our in-house tap story format, which we'll get to talk a lot more about. So I think there's probably the majority of the people that are in the group right now aren't even 100% familiar with that. So it'll be fun to kind of bring all those things together finally, especially with some of the other projects that we've got planned now in the second half of this year. So lots of improvements happening. It's slow and incremental, but it is all happening.
Again, for me, I'm on there every day. It's fun. I'm collecting my XP, and it's cool to see it starting to build, and have a collectible in there now, and some, it's using the reader. It's definitely fun. Like, I've been using the reader and showing people the Chamber of Chills and stuff like that, and everyone loves it. So
the big thing I will say, and actually, there's 13 people watching right now. If more people will watch this later, anyone in the group, as we talk more and more about the reading experience. The reader is obviously like a really key component of this. And my goal is no less than to have the world's best comics consumption reading experience that exists on the planet. I think there are some things we already do better than anyone else, and there are things that we have a plan on how we want to approach it so that it is better than anyone else. And I think it's really just going to be a fine-tuning thing. And so right now, what I am very aware of is that if you pull the reader up on your desktop, or if you pull the reader up on your laptop or an iPad, it's pretty good. Like, it's pretty fun and feels pretty good, and it's responsive, and it gives this kind of widescreen experience of moving through the pages. One of the things which is very different about our reader is the way I think about it is you're able to focus on either a full spread or a single page, depending on what size window you're looking at. So even on an iPad, you can rotate from landscape to portrait, and it'll hone in on, are you looking at a single page as part of a spread, or are you actually looking at the spread? We know what the spreads are, so we're keeping and preserving kind of what you would actually see as you're turning pages. But we do this thing where instead of just having it be those two pages, it's like one continuous line, basically. So we take all the pages and essentially kind of put them all in one line. And so you get a little additional context in the way you're moving through the story by being able to see a little bit of the left-hand page and a little bit of what's coming. And so to me, actually very open to feedback on this, but to me, what that does is it gives you the focal point of what you would normally be focused on, what the writers and artists intended, but it has this added benefit of giving you a little peripheral vision on where you came from and where you're going, which creates a slightly different experience of how you move through the story. And so to me, like, I think that's I think that's better than like one panel at a time, or, only one page at a time, which many of the other readers out there focus on. And so, being able to continue to kind of fine tune that, is something that is very important to me. And then, as you'll see, the different formats that are optimized for different experiences. Right now, I will say the reader is not great on mobile, and that's a problem, because that's always been true of traditional comic pages on mobile. The best that anyone has come up with so far is the kind of guided view, and literally what people are doing is drawing boxes on the back end around this panel and then this panel. And so you get this like little transition between, each panel, which is just never great because they change sizes and the word balloons change sizes, and you're kind of not, you can read it better, but it's not really that great because it was never meant to be that. And so, we're working on some different solutions for that, or some different ways of approaching that. but this will be something that we talk a lot about over the next 6 months, I'm sure, is just the different improvements to the reader, how we're working through those different things, taking as much feedback as we can get from people, and continuing to fine tune that experience, because I think it's we want to build the best, most optimized, most universal but elegant and delightful comics reading experience that is possible. And then by connecting those to physical things like we are with the Pre-Code Horror Collection, then you have the delight of the collectability on the physical side, this kind of digital reader copy, which you can have access to anywhere, no matter what you're doing. You don't have to, risk the books, for those of you that want to keep them in their sleeves and boards, which will probably also be me once I have them. And yet, you also get this kind of elevated experience of them, on a screen, especially if you're on a larger screen. So anyway, again, I'm kind of off on my soapbox here, but
it's good.
A lot of what we're working on.
Cut you off because it's stuff I want to hear. So going back to the books, now that some of us have these in our hands, and we can start to see what you guys have been doing.
Yeah.
What's the quality like versus, is that what we should expect on the pre-order, or
it'll be that but better, but also slightly different. So it's that is the reason we were able to print that one, actually, is it is a slightly different paper stock than what we have been waiting on this entire time. And also for the quantity of paper that we need to print this collection. You have to order the paper that we're using for the collection by the truckload, literally. So that was so we did a lot of evaluating to find the right close kind of thing that we could use for the annual. Also, these books will not be perfect bound like the annual, meaning they won't have a spine. They'll be stapled like the old books. Very intentionally. So they'll have a more traditional paper stock or cover excuse me, a more traditional cover stock, stapled. They're going to be, again, as close to the original reproductions, or as close to the original releases as we can make them. I'll be really fascinated when people do have both the individual books and the annual in their hands, to hear people's reactions, to those slight differences. It's not a massive difference, but it's a noticeable difference. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what people think about that. And even some of the pages in the annual have been, continued to be fine-tuned and worked on, as they come into the actual books. One of the stories in there is from Chamber of Chills 19, for example, and so you'll actually have two versions of that story going through our restoration process, and I think the one you're going to get as the individual book is even a little better than the one in there. And again, kind of curious to see what people's reactions to that are, and how many people notice the differences, and and all of that stuff. So so I think, as good or better is definitely my assessment of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm, like I said, I couldn't be happier. I mean, I think it exceeded expectations, which were extremely high, but flipping through it and reading it, I mean, it's just unreal to be able to,
it is kind of a little time machine, isn't it? It's like,
it's
even
crazy.
I wasn't buying comics in the 50s, but I still feel transported to that kind of time and place. It's pretty wild. And all the ads, like every day working on these things, I'm like, the ads just still make me laugh every time.
And it's funny because you know me, you've known me for a long time. I'm into older comics. I mean, that's what I like. It's what I collect anyway. So it's kind of like what I'm used to having in my hands, and reading and flipping through, and to have something that's just been made, and it's got the same texture, the same feel. Like I don't know how to describe it, but like it's almost like you can like the paper's got like little hairs, you know, like like
So
you can
you just want to
it's
brush
not,
its hair.
it's not smooth, you know what I mean? Like it's just everything about it is to me spot on.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's interesting because I do collect I still collect a small number of modern comics, and there's certainly something to be said. I remember, especially in the 90s, when the different kind of upgrades from newsprint, which it's all the materials, and to me there's like a materials and artistry component to this, where I've fallen more and more into thinking of authentic editions as, yes, there's a business thing here, there's a commerce thing here, but it's really an art project at its core. It's really this archival restoration project that happens to have an outlet to be able to be funded, to be able to be made. But it's when I look at that and compare it, it's like the reason we moved to different paper stock was because of computer coloring and like not being able to represent what was then being done with the artwork well on the classic paper. Conversely, though, you can't take the artwork that was created back then and use modern materials, and that doesn't look right. And so there's this mismatch between the art that was used to create the thing and the materials used to create the thing. And I think that's what's been really interesting to kind of think through and work through. And even as we've had to make some certain creative choices around, how we approach certain elements of the restoration, that's where we try to keep coming back to, is it's a, kind of a respect for the artistry and the materials and how those things are married together to get this, this closest as possible result. And what I find kind of fascinating is that, when you look at other facsimiles, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but it's like most facsimiles, not all, but the vast majority of the facsimiles that are created by all publishers, even Archie, even the conversation that we've had with Archie, which is, they don't have their old files. They weren't keeping this stuff. They weren't precious about it 80 years ago. This was just like, get the next book out. So most of the original artwork has been lost, or, in best case, it's been held onto by artists or collectors at this point. But especially like with Marvel, huge chunks of original artwork have gone missing. Marvel doesn't have a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. Like, Archie doesn't have a copy of Archie #1. It's, they just literally don't have it. So for us to be able to get a hold of a PEP 22, which is the first, appearance of Archie, or Suspense 3, which is, this kind of grail in the pre-code horror collection. Number one, they're hard books to get a hold of because they're rare and expensive and, really collectible. But then you look at, the other facsimiles, even of those same books, and like, you can find a facsimile of Archie #1. It just looks nothing like Archie #1. It's been redrawn, it's been relettered. I mean, redrawn, like traced. It's been traced to sort of look like it. It's been relettered. It's been recolored. Usually, and this is the other kind of odd choice, and I'm not, throwing anyone else under the bus who's making these facsimiles. People like them. They sell very well. But in many cases, they're recolored in a way which is like they're being true to the colors, in the sense that, like, this car is blue, therefore I will use blue. But they're done in this very flat style, which doesn't actually represent what the material actually looked like or looks like. And so it has this, again, this kind of weird, to me, it's kind of weird disconnect where it doesn't look like a modern comic. It doesn't look like the classic comic. It's this kind of interesting, in my mind, kind of horrific middle ground. And looking at Archie as just one example, when we were doing our restoration of the cover for Archie #1, and then you look at the facsimile of Archie #1, like, that one has been redrawn. It's missing so much detail in the ice and the, that they're skating on, or, there are lines missing from Archie's shirt that weren't traced or, captured in the facsimile. And the quality of the draftsmanship and the quality of the illustration in these old books is astonishing. It's it was something to me that's like, I prior to going into this, like I kind of had a conception of what 40s and 50s comics were. And I've certainly seen Golden Age comics, but I hadn't focused on, them in this, to this degree. I was much more Silver Age person prior to this. So lots of stuff around like early Marvel and certainly like early appearances of Spider-Man. And I picked up reprints when I was a kid of the early X-Men and Spider-Man and that Hulk and all that stuff. And so I'm very familiar with that material, and obviously a huge fan of Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and that whole era. That's really where I kind of grew up, and then into the Image 90s and all that stuff. But I think there's a conception, or at least for me, there was a conception for a lot of people, I suspect, that comics from the 40s and 50s are kind of crude, that they weren't as sophisticated as the Marvel age, and certainly not as sophisticated as modern comics in some ways. And what I found in pre-code horror in particular, but very much in Archie too, just in a different genre, I mean, the quality of the illustration in many of these books is astonishing. Like, it's as good or better than anything that has been produced since. Like, they're these are illustrators. They're not even just and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. They're not just comic artists, amazing comic artists. So again, not disparaging comic artists. I love comic artists, but these are in many cases it's obvious these are classically trained illustrators that just happen to be making comics. And the page layouts, the storytelling, the sophistication of I think we actually looked at a page maybe in one of the last couple of videos where there's like your eye is just so completely masterfully led through the storytelling on the page. There's a seagull, which is the wing is kind of bringing you right from this part of the story to the most important element of the last panel on the page, which then of course makes you want to turn the page. So there's just this incredible craftsmanship to so much of this stuff. And when you see again these other facsimile recreations of these, you just in most cases lose the line work, the detail and the coloring, the amount of being able to do gradients, being able to actually mix this incredibly limited color palette to create these visceral scenes in the horror stories, for example. And in many cases, even in the oldest books, even in the books from the 40s, if you really think about like what they were working with, like no computers, no previews, like these are they're making notes for the printer of like mix these colors on top of each other here with these different patterns to create this particular effect or this particular tone. It's amazing. It really is an incredible kind of archival of material and what people did to create this. So anyway, I've become, I'm what do they call it? I'm dog fooding my own product a lot right now, and it's yummy. It's very yummy.
Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway, that's again another soapbox. Which ones are left?
Man. What else we got? I'm out. What have you had? What else have you guys been working on, man? I know you've been slammed.
I mean, we're really. I mean, we've been really heads down and just getting all this stuff ready so that we were determined that no matter what, the minute the paper arrived, everything would be ready to go, and it is, and it has been, and so we're. Just very excited about that. So we're continuing to work through, those final steps, continue to work through getting everything set to go for Archie. We have been planning additional collections and additional campaigns. We just haven't felt like we could or should talk about them or announce them or really make any noise about them until we, fulfill the promise that we made with Pre-Code Horror, especially. And only, of course, Archie as well, but just to, I think once people get Pre-Code Horror, my hope is that you'll go like, oh yeah, these guys didn't deliver on time, but they're real with what they're doing. So I want to alleviate those concerns before we go like, hey, here's the next cool thing that we're doing. Give us your money. So that will come, rest assured. But it'll be after people get Pre-Code Horror. So we have been planning that stuff. We do have as I mentioned, some very cool things coming into Comic-Con. So we've got a few announcements that we are going to make mostly platform related, between now and the end of July. And then possibly one other project that we're doing with a partner, which is not Authentic Editions related, but it is incredibly cool. And so we're pretty excited about it. And we think people that liked the Pre-Code Horror collection will very likely also like this, even though it's a little different.
Well, I saw on Kickstarter you guys were doing the single issues. How's that?
It was great. So, a couple people, asked about that, or I think felt like maybe we shouldn't have done that, but I'll explain why we did. This is another kind of thing as to, we wouldn't have ended up doing that had we not had these kind of additional delays. And I can understand, a couple people feeling like, well, that makes it a little less special, or, making them available to everyone, somehow diminishes the exclusivity of them. But, that aside, like, these are pretty small print runs. So this first printing is certainly going to be incredibly collectible if you're thinking about it from that point of view. The red foils, for example, I think we're printing, maybe 400 copies. So, I mean, these are going to be, quite rare. And in the case of something like the foils, probably never reprinted in any format or fashion. So, I think there's plenty for the super collectible side in here. But what we realized is we were heading towards, knowing that the paper was coming. So we waited till we knew the paper was coming. And then when we knew that it was, we're like, we have this kind of 2-week window now between when we knew the paper was going to arrive and when we had to lock our final numbers to print. And so we knew we had also gotten messages from people that were like, either I missed the campaign, I still really wish I could get in on this, or, a handful of people which had said, I desperately want like these 3 books. I either can't afford the full Frightening 15 or, really only care about these few things, or I just want a couple of the foils. And we couldn't have done that in the actual campaign. Like we couldn't have financially made it work to go like, just pick, 3 books. Like we just couldn't have done it. We actually ran those numbers, but it just didn't work. But once we knew that the campaign had funded and we knew what we were going to do for the collection, then, this was a moment where we could say, okay, here's this limited window. If you want to jump in and get some, a few individual issues or add like maybe there are a few people I know who had gotten like, oh, we got it. I got everything except the red foils. So I'm just going to get these 2 red foils, or I'm just going to get these 3 fluorescents that I care about or whatever. And because we could just add those to the final numbers that are going to print, that's what made that possible to do. And so, we had a nice little extra number of people that took advantage of it, which is great for us, great for the project, great for the people that will get those books. But nothing that's gonna all of a sudden crater the collectible value of these either. So that's the story there. And I will say, with Archie, you can actually still buy single issues for Archie as well, kind of for the same reason. Like as we're locking everything in, this just adds to the final print number. And right now, the Archie collection is actually even a lower print run in general than Pre-Code Horror. So, anyone that wants a couple of Archies that maybe didn't get into the full collection, those are currently available on the pre-order store for Archie. So I think, these are all things we're playing with. We are going into all of this with a plan, but we're also, making decisions and testing things and trying things. And so, before we launched single issues for Archie, we had an internal debate going like, is anybody going to even want this? Are people going to be mad? Like, we don't know. Like, let's try it and see. So generally the reaction has been very positive to, being able to widen the net to people that can participate while still, maintaining the collectible value that is something we care about too. So, that's the story there.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're at almost an hour. So just to wrap it up, I think, like I said, there will be a more concrete timeline coming over the next, 24 to 72 hours would be my guess, and could be tomorrow. My guess is more likely going to be Monday or Tuesday. We'll have a kind of locked printing schedule as far as when we're going on press. The printers now need to review all the files. There's a layout where there's something interesting that this is why you have people that are on the printing side of things, but they're figuring out some elements of how the red foils get married to the right layouts for the book. So that's happening right now. So there are some of those things which are going to take probably a day or two just to make sure everything is 100% locked down. As soon as we have that information, we'll share it with backers. And then we'll have a real timeline for delivery of the Frightening 15. And then we'll follow that up with a timeline for the delivery of the rest of the books. And then we'll follow that up with a timeline for Archie. And then at some point in there, we'll start talking about some of the next stuff that's coming. So, I think the big thing, just to wrap this up for me to say, is just, as I genuinely feel so thankful for the people that have supported these projects, that are supporting the things that we're trying to build and that we're trying to do. It is deeply meaningful to me personally and to us as a company to be able to work on this stuff. It is a passion project as much as it is a commercial endeavor. We literally couldn't do it without people that are interested in what we're trying to do. So I do feel very grateful for everyone that supported the project. And for those of you that are engaging on, in the Facebook group and on the platform and, playing in this sandbox and in this Macroverse that we're trying to build, very appreciative of that too. It really does make a difference as we're trying to build something that not only we love, but that you love too. So it's incredibly helpful to have that direct feedback and to not just be guessing at what people's reactions will be. So that's all a huge giant thank you. We do have a new Tiny Universe badge for for June, now that we're in June. And like I said, it's not letting me post the link to that in the chat. So I'll just jump around to the different places where you're watching this stream and drop that into the comments at the top under the stream. So if you want to collect that this month's Tiny Universe badge, by all means do. One of those things where over time we'll find different ways to connect some dots and go like, oh, you got 5 Tiny Universe badges here. So we'll have fun with all this stuff as it continues to get rolled out. That's part of the point. It's like I didn't even, and this is actually a little secret. Like right now, because we are just trying stuff. Like big part of invention is trying, testing, seeing what people's reaction is on things, and that helps us make product decisions. It helps us make platform decisions. So we got the paper yesterday, and it really just occurred to me this morning that it's like, oh, we should do a badge for getting the paper. Like this is an event. Like let's memorialize this. This is important for us. It's important for the people that are getting this collection. Like let's have some fun with this. And so that's what's so cool about where we are with the platform right now, is we can have that kind of idea, and then within a couple of hours have it spun up and out to people to collect and to celebrate this moment together. So it's trying to bring fandom and collecting and storytelling and love of all of this stuff together in a way that's fun and a little different than some of the other platforms that are out there. There you go.
Very nice.
All right. So if you're tired of me talking, which you probably are, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. But feel free again to jump into the Facebook group. Right now it's pretty. We've got about almost 160 people in the Facebook group right now. One of the things I promise I will stop talking momentarily. But one of the things I am very delighted by, and this just again speaks to the quality of the people that have chosen to engage more deeply here, is that it's a relatively small group, but everyone is really great, and that has been our experience for community the entire time. Like we have very rarely come across someone at any of the things that we've worked on that was a community member who was trying to be an asshole for lack of a better way to say it. It's like people are really warm and genuine, and even the questions that come up, I take all of those as genuine, at least the way it occurs to me is like genuinely trying to contribute and make things better for them, for us, for everyone. So again, I appreciate all of that. And this small kind of core group is, you guys really are in at the ground floor of everything that we're building. And so, I hope to make it, very beneficial and worth your while in a bunch of different ways. But also I'm really proud of, this. I'd rather have a small group that's really interested and excited about what we're trying to do that can grow organically, rather than, let's go run a bunch of ads and try to push a ton of people into the platform right now. Like that's not the game we're playing. We're trying to, really have this be something that's meaningful and worthwhile. And, so seeing that, kind of early stages of organic growth around this stuff, it tells me we're headed in the right direction, and that's meaningful as well. So yes, come join us in the Facebook group if you're watching this. We are having some fun there. We are doing the daily badges there, and there will be a lot more to come.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I enjoy the Facebook group. I go in there and drop in some books that I get every once in a while. Yeah. I've had some good conversations. I mean, like, it's nothing but good people. Same as the Discord has been and everything. I mean, that's why I fell in love with this community in the first place. Is just how genuinely awesome the people are that are connected to it.
Yep. For the love of the game, man. For the love of the game. So yeah, I mean, actually, we're trying to wrap up here, but that is something I will say. I think you've done this a bit. A couple other people have dropped some other things in there, but right now the conversation is generally very focused, and understandably so, because like I said, like the people that are there are 99% there because they've come in from backing Pre-Code Horror.
Yeah.
But I do hope we can open up the discussion to be a little broader into all of this geek pop culture stuff that we love, because we're there to make cool things and to engage around the things that we're building. But at heart, I think everyone there to some degree or another is a nerd or a geek or a some flavor of that, or else why are we buying old comic books? So I think in the best possible way, in the most endearing sense of those terms, this is we have some common interests here, and it's a good group to be able to share those things and talk about either old books, new books, things you're picking up or finding. A few people, I loved when somebody got the annual. He posted a side by side of one of the books that he actually had in his collection.
Yeah,
and the annual, and I was delighted to see that you could barely tell the difference.
It was spot on, man. It was really. I remember that.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff is really fun, and if you are picking up stuff Macroverse related or not, I think it's a good place to kind of connect around these things that we love for whatever reason, and encourage people to do that for sure. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for hosting and listening and letting me jump from one soapbox to another. We will try to do this more than once a month, but I think we can promise at least once a month at this point. We will have some stuff to talk about between now and Comic-Con for sure. So we'll make sure we get a time to do that. Comic-Con, by the way, for anyone that may not know, is end of July. So I believe it's the third week of July. So we've got some stuff ramping into that, more stuff to come with schedules and all that stuff. Can't wait for people to start getting these books in their hands. It's going to be
I can't wait.
Celebration day, and get ready to scan some QR codes, baby. So there'll be a lot of fun.
And make some unboxing videos.
Yes, definitely want to see some unboxing videos. Want to see some reaction videos. Want to get. I really want to. I will put this out right now, and we'll say it a bunch more times. Like, the more true visceral reactions that we can see, the more delighted I will be, and we'll find some ways to make that to reward that activity as well. So it's gonna be fun for sure. So with that, have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a wonderful weekend. Read some comics, watch some movies, take care of yourselves. Join us on Facebook. Check out macroverse.com. We are actually working on a new homepage right now as well. We've been all Archie for a little while now, and we love Archie, but we're doing more than Archie. So working on a new homepage, and lots more to come. So I'm Evan Matthews. Thank you for tuning in. Check the comments for the link to redeem the badge, and we'll be back sometime in the not so distant future from across the Macroverse. Anything you want to say, Tiny?
No, man. Thank you for all the information. You know, I am as much a fan as I am, part of everything. So I mean, just because I'm here on video, I still love to hear all this stuff. So, I appreciate it as well.
Well, I appreciate you being what's the right word? It's kind of the voice of the community, the question asker of the community. So I appreciate you taking that role as well. All right, my friend, I am going to, in 3, 2, 1, ending the